Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webcast on how to retain your top employees and grow your business. I'm going to give just a couple minutes for anyone else who might want to join us, and I'll be starting here in about 1 or 2 minutes, so hold tight. Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Like I said, thank you so much for joining. This webcast is all about how to keep your best employees and grow your business. I am Krista from Krista Sanford Consulting, as you may have guessed. And today we're going to have a good, fun conversation all around culture and retention and employees and how you can do that. But ultimately, how you can implement simple people solutions that drive big results. So whether you're a leader, a business owner, a manager, it really doesn't matter. These tools and tactics are really going to help you to engage your employees and really continue to grow your business just like you need to do. I also think I'll give you some tips and tools that will save you time, energy, emotion, and who doesn't need more of that? So we're going to dive in. A few ground rules before we get started. This is called Crowdcast, and I think you guys have a group chat up in the corner, and there's also a space to enter any questions or topics that you would like to discuss. So please feel free to enter those at any time. I will try to answer any questions as we go or respond to any topics that you might want to discuss as we go. But if I don't, I am going to hold some time at the end of the webcast to go ahead and answer any questions that you ask throughout the entire time we're on the call. Also, I just want to make this very valuable and engaging for you. It's important to me that I do that because if I haven't done you any service by giving you some value, I haven't done a really good job. So make sure that I've covered anything that you have in mind, and I'm happy to talk about specific scenarios at the end of the call. As we go into this presentation, I want to give you a heads up of what we will be reviewing. Overall, I'm going to talk a little bit about my philosophy on how we can approach culture, how we can keep our best employees, and how we can grow our business. I'll also talk a little bit about the state of the industry and what that means for you. And then I think the most important part is I'm going to help you to understand ideas, tools, tactics, things that you can execute either on your own or with help to really create that culture, that best place to work that keeps your people engaged and inspired. So let's go ahead and dive in. Okay, so what is my philosophy around culture and people and growth? Well, I think that together we rise. And what that means is that we are really in this time where it's not just as an employer or a leader, as a business, that you have to just give to your employees. But we're at a time where not only do we need to encourage our employees to be successful, to drive the business forward, but they really want it. The employees are really craving the ability to understand their influence within the organization. And we can start to give that to them. With the way that technology is changing things within our organizations, we can give them the data and the knowledge to help them really drive their own success and own their success within your organization. And I think with that, it saves you time, energy, money, etc. And then you can go work on the business instead of always course correcting and working in the business. So what does that look like in today's world? Well, right now, the landscape is this. 70% of workers are uninspired or disengaged. That's a huge number. When you really think about that, how many people is that within your organization who aren't really engaged and aren't giving their best work? Well, how do we help that? Well, if you look at the next statistic, we have these great places to work. The companies that really invest in their people, their culture, the way that they support their team, their clients, and they have 65% less voluntary turnover. And on the flip side of that, companies are really experiencing a 15% turnover on average. So you can imagine any way that we can decrease that retention rate, is a really good, or the turnover rate is a really good thing for us as any organization. And the way that we are seeing things moving with millennials and Gen Zs, I know there's a lot of talk around these younger generations in the workforce, but the reality is these groups are going to be 75% of the workforce by 2020. And we continue to give them benefits like travel, more time on vacation, ping pong tables, over in Silicon Valley. Those are the things that they really think about, are the work hard, play hard. But in reality, these millennials, these Gen Zs are really thinking about the quality of their time, their purpose, their influence, and they really value these intangible benefits. And when we think about that, you may be wondering, well, what are those intangible benefits? We'll talk about that in a little bit, but it's all about how we identify these employees' purpose and how we help them influence the organization. And this is huge. It's huge because not only does it reduce our turnover rate, but it also increases sales. It increases that bottom line. And one of the biggest things, and I think we all know how important this is, no matter where you are in the organization, is innovation. Our people are our greatest assets to innovating within the industry, within the company, and we need them to feel engaged and inspired in order to push the business forward. This is a very well-known fact. But what does this actually mean for you? You may be a business leader, a manager, an owner. You may be at a nonprofit or at a big company. So what do those numbers actually mean for you? Well, I've tried to pull some information together, and I'll share that here in a little bit. So we'll talk through those specifics. But first, I want to share an analogy. So you see this car. It's a little bit beat up. It's a little bit rough on the outside, and I'll tell you why I chose this car in a second. But imagine that the car is your business. The car is your business and you are the driver. And you may not be the owner of the business. Maybe you're a manager. Maybe you're very influential to the growth of the business, or maybe you're really responsible for keeping all the pieces and the parts moving, the people in place in order to grow the business. So you're the driver. All of the pieces and the parts in the car are the people and processes that help you move forward, that help you get to where you're going. Now, as you can imagine, the reason why I chose a little bit of a beat up car is because as businesses, as people, we go through a lot to grow our business. We go through a lot to get to where we want to go. We're constantly getting beat up. And the really important part is that we get all those pieces and parts to work together so that we can keep on moving and so that we can be effective and efficient with our time. So imagine the scenario. You're driving down the road. The wind is in your hair. There's fresh air in the car. Everything's running really smoothly. And then let's say your right front tire starts to wobble. It starts to get a little bit unsecure. And then all of a sudden it just falls off without warning. And you're left stranded on the side of the road. Well, with the analogy, your right front tire might be one of your top employees. And when you lose one of those top employees, you know the feeling. You feel a little stuck. You feel a little stranded. And everyone else within the organization also feels stuck and stranded or is having trouble moving forward. That right front tire is really important to getting us where we want to go and to reach our goals. And so you can imagine that if you're stuck on the side of the road out in the middle of nowhere, you have to call a repairman, a mechanic, to come back out and replace that tire and to help you get back on the road and get to where you're going. That takes time, it takes energy, a lot of frustration, and money. It takes a lot of money. And so as a company, if you lose that right front tire, what does that start to mean for you? Well, what that means is on average, if you're a 20 to 50 person company, you could be losing $100,000 to $200,000 just on turnover alone on an annual basis. That doesn't even include the intangibles of the time, the energy, the emotion that it causes for all of the other employees. And I'd guess that the majority of us don't even know what it takes to replace one of those top tier employees. And honestly, if you have an average employee making $50,000 a year, it takes about 20% of that salary to replace them. If it's an executive, you can look at anywhere up to 200% of that person's salary to replace that executive. It's a huge cost. So just like being on the side of the road in that car, having to call the mechanic to come help you repair that car to get you back on the road, the same thing is happening to you and your business. And you might be thinking, okay, but more specifically, what are we talking about? Well, like I said, it's about 20% of the person's salary in order to replace them. But not only that, and the second number is really important for you if you're on this call. It's because you're spending a lot of time and money and energy trying to keep these employees engaged, trying to inspire them, trying to help keep them accountable to where you need to go and align them with your vision and your goals. So if you're even spending 4 hours a week, and maybe it's two of you within the organization who are really talking about the people and engaging in this conversation, you're spending a lot of time and money on trying to fix this issue that you could otherwise be spending on the business, which is really important. There's a lot of opportunity there that you might be missing. And like I said, it's not just money, it's also all of the intangibles. But all of this stuff can start to change. You can shift this. You can make the change that changes everything from the ground up. And what I'm talking about are those investments in becoming a best place to work, are the investments in your people. Creating cultural initiatives can save you tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars annually. And like I said, it's not all about money. When it comes to people, it's about relationships. It's about the way you feel with everyone. It's about the way that the team jives. And those intangible things, those can be fixed too with these solutions. So now I'm going to share with you some top tier strategies that I use with my clients that I think are really, really helpful. And these are things that you can implement now without too much hassle to make changes immediately and be that place where people feel at their best, that they can be that right front tire for a really long time. And not only that, but they're going to tell you when they start to get wobbly, right? And wouldn't that be nice? Because you'd be saving all of that time, that energy, that emotion. So let's dig in. Let's dig into those top tier strategies. And then I'm going to give you specific ways on how you can execute on these things, which I think are the most valuable. All right, so we hear this again and again and again. Content is king. Content is king. If you're in the content marketing space or you're even thinking about promoting your business, it's all about content. Well, I'm here to tell you that it's actually all about communication. When it comes to your people, it's so important to have strong communication. And you might be thinking, Krista, great. I already know that. I'm trying. I do this all the time. It's just not working. That's not that valuable. But let me share with you a few tactics, a few tactical things that you can execute on that are going to provide a ton of value for you. So how to execute on communication. With technology, with the way that we're interacting with the world right now, we remove a lot of the human interaction. And you know this scenario. You have a rough morning, you're hustling through, you get to the office and you just start going throughout your day. You answer your emails, you go through your meetings. You may get to the end of your day and never even have a chance to talk to some of those employees, especially the ones that are really important to your business. And can you imagine if you're that employee, how disengaged you feel if you don't have that interaction? Well, we just keep going because that's just the way it is. That's the way that the world works right now. But one of the best things that you can implement is just generally when that person comes to you or when they seem a little bit frustrated or frazzled, ask questions. Just ask a lot of questions. I think often you may have been through this scenario in the past. An employee comes to your office, they're frustrated. You haven't talked to them in weeks because you've just been too busy. They're frustrated, they're emotional, and they don't really know how to communicate with you. And as a leader, as a manager, as just someone who is responsible for the growth of the business, you immediately jump in and want to problem solve. You want to make sure that whatever that person is frustrated about, you're going to solve it. Well, in this case, what I encourage you to do is stop and give them that ownership back. If you remember what I said earlier about the philosophy, it's about encouraging them to take the reins of their own success. And in this case, if you ask questions and help them get to their own problem, you can then encourage them to solve their problem. And you're really just giving them the coaching and the space to learn how to do that. So ask questions, be patient, And more importantly, explain your thinking, explain your process. Too often we get so frazzled and move so quickly that we don't explain thoroughly why we're doing what we're doing or why we're communicating what we're communicating. So that is a very, very simple way that you can start making changes. Now, the next one is really, really valuable for teams, for employees, for an organization. And this is the hosting full company roundtables. Now, like I said, I'm not going to talk through all of these, but I'm going to tell you the ones that provide a ton of value pretty quickly. And these roundtables have proven to be incredibly valuable for companies and organizations. These roundtables are a space where the entire team, from the CEO to the intern, can come together, have open, honest conversations, and can trust each other to have those conversations and really work through problems and issues that the whole company is experiencing. I've seen conversations happen at these roundtables that would never otherwise happen at the office. And so to execute on one of these roundtables, here's what I'd recommend. Go find a facilitator, someone who knows how to group facilitate these types of conversations. Ask them to send a survey before the roundtable. Make sure you give the employees a heads up. We do this on a quarterly basis with my clients, so they know well in advance to plan around it. It's right at the end of the day or after work so that they can plan for it. And then with that facilitator, and in this case, it's me, but if you're going to use a facilitator, make sure they send a questionnaire out in advance, have them ask about things that are going well within the organization, things that these employees want to work on or talk about, even maybe things that they're celebrating. And then as the facilitator, they can go through and find the themes that everybody is communicating. And then as the facilitator, they can bring those to the table at the round table, sit in a circle, and have that facilitator start the conversation and direct the conversation through these themes and topics. And what makes it really valuable is when everybody really opens up and is vulnerable, authentic, and can share openly and honestly about how they're feeling. I've seen CEOs open up first and really provide the space for employees to feel comfortable sharing their concerns, being heard about the things that frustrate them. And we talk about really hard topics in a really comfortable space. It builds, like I said, that human interaction that we don't otherwise create within the work environment. It's really, really valuable. But don't forget that with roundtables and anything that you do, have that facilitator walk away and send action items as a follow-up. Have action that comes out of those conversations, or at least some type of overview of what you covered. I think another thing in this communication section that we really need to talk about is this idea of confidentiality, accountability, and honesty. Especially with small teams, we don't think as much about how we keep those conversations confidential or how we hold each other accountable to that honest conversation or to even having the conversations in general. Like I mentioned before, instead of solving the problems for your employees, encourage them to have the critical, tough conversations with their coworkers. Help them to build those relationships. Give them the reins to be successful. Solving their problems for them is not going to give them the influence on the business that they want. If I go back to that statistic about the intangible benefits that the millennials and the younger generations want, they want those intangibles. And the intangibles are the ability to have the tough conversations and grow from them. It's not easy, but as a leader, as a manager, it's your responsibility to help them grow through that and help them take care of those things on their own. And one last thing in this communication section is this idea of personality tools. There is so much information out there that you can leverage that is free, and you can leverage it for your entire team. We're talking about Myers-Briggs, Imperative, which is a new tool. It's at imperative.com. Personalysis, StrengthsFinders. All of these things help you understand each individual within the company and how they support the company. But not only that, it helps you understand how to communicate with them, how they might receive and give communication, but also how they process information. And that awareness and that knowledge as a team fosters a lot of success, a lot of growth, and you know what? A lot of goodwill within the organization. So use those tools, leverage those tools. They're incredibly important, and there's so many out there that you can use. Now, the next strategy that I often talk about, and this is one that is so near and dear to my heart, mostly because I'm a little bit of a geek and I love data. So I'm very much a people person, but on the flip side of that, I really love data and I love to be able to set expectations that drive results. And this is where we really get a little bit heavier into the insights, and we'll talk about those a little bit more later. But when I'm talking about setting expectations, what I'm talking about is giving your employees the insights to understand how they influence the growth of the company. So as an organization, you probably have goals for the next 12 months, 24 months, 36 months. I'm not sure how far you're planning out, but you have goals in place. Now, traditionally, we've not really been open to sharing those big goals with our employees because it's not very comfortable. There aren't many organizations who can do that confidently and feel like they can share that information with their employees and that their employees know what to do with it. Well, in this model, you're telling your employees, you're setting the expectations for your employees to understand not only how they can support your growth, but they can support their growth as a professional and as a person within their work and in their life. And so here's where I start with this. I start with making sure that you are very clear on your vision, your values, and your goals. This is some of the purpose work that every organization does, but it really helps you set the foundation for where you are and where you're going. There are a lot of companies out there who do this type of work and can really help you get clear on those values and that vision. And so when you set that in place, you're automatically creating expectations for how you want your employees to interact within the organization. Now, on the flip side of that, you want to share your goals and you want to act on your values. And by doing so, you put those out and you lay those out in front of your employees and you say, this is where we're going and this is how we're going to get there. Now, on an individual level, what you do is work with each employee to understand and to document how they can have individual goals that align with the company goals. And so in this case, and I'll skip down to the next slide so you can get a visual of this. This is a tool that I use. But basically what we do is we set out a company goals section that over the next 12 months, we expect to do X, Y, or Z. And then under that, we immediately say, as an individual, as an employee within this organization, you can expect to help reach these goals and influence the company goals by reaching your own goals. And so build out 1 to 10 employee individual goals that not only help them influence the organization, but also help them understand how they get from one position to the next position. And so let's say that you have customer relations individuals, employees, and they're responsible for getting sales and growing the business in that way. Well, if you want to grow the company by, let's say, 10%, and we'll use a very simple example, you have 10 customer service individuals who are responsible for that growth. Well, then you can imagine that each individual might have 1% of the responsibility of growing that part of the business. And so what this does is it sets a foundation. Now, I will say that this is never black and white, but when you come to those review processes, this is a great way to track how people are not only growing as an individual, but overall supporting the growth of the business. And like I said, and I'll say it again and again, your top employees and your employees in general really want to understand how they support the growth of the business. And this is a great way to do it. Now, before I move forward, I do think it's really important to talk about the fact that, like I said a lot earlier, work-life integration is becoming more and more prominent. We can never really turn it off. And so what this dashboard actually allows you to do is not only create the individual professional goals that help this person grow, but it's their responsibility to insert some personal goals that help them be the best version of themselves. So you might find an employee who has children and says, well, in order for me to be at my best self, I need to, on average, I need to be leaving at 5 p.m. every day. And maybe that's really important to them because their priority in life is their family. And so put that out there, make that a goal. Or maybe it's health-based. I want to maintain my health and my exercise regimen. Go ahead and put that in there so that you're bosses, your employers, even as a manager, you understand not just the professional things that someone's going for, but also the personal things. And that also helps the company be accountable to that individual's growth as well outside of the office, and helps them be really successful overall, because we're really paying attention to everything that's important to them. Now, I will say that after you build out the individual goals, the most value comes in when you build out these strategies and tactics that help them to reach those goals. And I would say that for each goal, build out at least 1 to 2 strategies that each individual can do in order to reach that goal. And then talk about that on a monthly basis. Measure it on a monthly basis. The gem of this tool and this exercise is really, it sets the expectations, but more than that, it allows you to have those monthly honest conversations about how the employee is doing, how the company is doing in supporting the employee, and if everyone is growing in the way that they intended to grow. It takes a lot of emotion, a lot of energy, a lot of time out of the conversations around, hey, boss, when am I going to get my raise? I've been here for a year. This gives you a way to have that conversation much more objectively. It becomes a lot easier. There's so much benefit to setting expectations and measuring against those expectations. I cannot say it enough. If you don't have a review process in place, a 360 review with your team, or some type of model like this, I highly encourage it. It really helps your employees to understand how they're setting and reaching expectations within the company. Next, we're going to talk about insights. And insights keep you in the know. If you're a leader, if you're a manager, or if you are a business owner, this is really, really important. Just like you're driving down the road in that beat up car and your right front tire starts to fall off, what if you knew ahead of time that that right front tire was starting to wobble? What if you had the insights and the awareness to know that there was an issue and you could course correct before you went out into the middle of nowhere and lost the tire? Well, insights help you do that. This knowledge and awareness really helps you to understand where things are working, where they're not working, and what you can do about it. This is also one of the most valuable things that I provide to my clients on a regular basis, because it helps keep them in the know about their most valuable asset, which is their people. And so what I'd recommend here and how to execute and how to gain these insights is to first compile a monthly report. This could be just a simple Word document, but identify the things that you want to know about how your people influence your business. And so these are things like retention rates, productivity, client satisfaction, employee satisfaction. It could be any metrics that are really important to your organization that are in alignment with your goals, and you want to measure on a monthly basis to keep yourself and the rest of the managers, executives, leaders in awareness of how the employees are feeling. And I will say that with this information, you really want to make sure that you're not only getting the quantitative data, but you're also understanding the qualitative aspect of it. Because if you can connect the dots and understand what the people are experiencing and how that affects things like productivity and satisfaction, you're going to be able to act on it a lot sooner. So, for instance, did you know that a decrease in the amount of work that is available for your employees actually relates to or is correlated with a decrease in employee satisfaction? This is something that I'm seeing again and again. And as we start to connect these dots, you can almost predict and monitor what's going to happen to your team and what they might be feeling. It really helps you to get to the core of the issues that people are experiencing, as opposed to really solving those things on the surface level that aren't necessarily causing the issue. So the quantitative and qualitative feedback are incredibly important. And at the same time, it's really important to monitor that on a monthly basis, but it's also really important to just stay accountable. Put it on your calendar. Make sure you're actually creating and delivering on this report and these metrics, because it's important that you have the conversation around it from a larger perspective. If you're going to make the investments in this initiative, you better make sure that you're getting what you want out of it and that you're understanding how it's helping you along the way. Because if you know that, and you can be aware of the fact that, okay, well, securing the tire before I went on the road trip helped me to avoid that situation, you're going to do that again. So it creates these new behaviors, not only for yourself as a leader, but also for the other managers and leaders within your organization. And that's incredibly important. Here are some reports and insights that I share. Like I said, creating some around overall satisfaction level, productivity, retention rates. It's also something here is important to note is that you might have to create some of the tools and the ways in which you can gather this data. If you're a little bit more of a modern company, you might have tools and applications that are already compiling data around productivity or satisfaction. But this actually is, a lot of this is just pulled from tools that we've created. You can create them from the ground up in things like Google Documents if you use that. There are so many tools and strategies out there that you can use to get this type of information for your company. So when in doubt, when all these other strategies may or may not be working, what do? When in doubt, seek outside help. Find someone who specializes in this. Find people who can come in and help. This could be coaches. This could be facilitators. It could be group presentations. I know that there are a lot of people, even in this area, that specialize in specific topics such as crucial conversations or how to be most productive or work-life balance. And pulling in those outside sources to help you and your team through that is so valuable to your team. And it shows your investment in those top employees and making sure that you are a best place to work because you are investing in the people. I'd also say leverage employee improvement plans. This is something that isn't always a comfortable thing to do, but it is something that we can put in place if expectations aren't being met and we're not having a really great relationship with our employees. And I'll be honest, as I've seen these employee improvement plans executed and seen all the way through, I've seen really good results. Like I said, creating expectations for employees and helping them to get there, so important, and you're going to see the outcomes. They're going to be good. On the other side, on the flip side of this, if we're going to get really honest, just when it comes to human interaction, this is something small, but I always recommend this to my clients. If you can't solve it in the office, go to lunch, go to drinks, go to coffee, whatever it is, just get outside the office and have an honest conversation about how that employee is feeling, what they're experiencing, and what you guys can both do to resolve the situation. Just be in that constant conversation and that constant awareness of how your team is feeling and what they're experiencing. And with all that said, we can really solve those complex people problems with actually very simple solutions. You know, when we're looking at a team, when we're looking at how we can actually move everyone forward and keep them in alignment and keep them accountable, it almost looks like a mountain that we have to climb. But in all reality, it's not really that hard to implement some of these solutions. And they can be done almost for free, and some of them not for free, but there are so many options to get you moving in the right direction. And when you do, I promise that you're going to see a lot of value. Things like these cultural initiatives, some of these things, the strategies I'm sharing with you today, create the #1 rated benefit for employees and employers. Time savings for you, for your managers, improved communication, increased employee satisfaction. Sometimes the ripple effect even goes as far out as improved client satisfaction. So you can even imagine what the effect is on having your employees feel really good and feel really engaged and inspired. Growth and development plans, improved retention rate. And like I said at the beginning, you may experience things like really good increases on the bottom line or huge increases on the bottom lines, or maybe even more innovation from your team. And I think all of those things are incredibly valuable and important and things that will help you keep those best employees around. And so with that said, and with all the information that I'd shared, I would love to hear from you and any questions that you might have. I'm going to dig in to see if there are any that exist right now. Anything that you might be thinking or wondering. If you have any questions or anything that you want to know based on this topic, please feel free to submit those in the questions and topics area or in the chat section of the webcast. And if there are no questions, I just want to thank you for your time today. And please feel free to contact me afterward if you do have anything come up, or if you'd like to get specific tools and tactics that you can use to improve your culture and retain those best employees and grow your business. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day, and I hope to hear from you soon.